Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. Sorry for the delay. I wanted to make sure that this session is being recorded so that you can go back and hold me accountable, but also for those who aren't able to be here. That's why the computer's here. I was just checking with that, so let me make that a little bit better. Thank you all. Oh man, what's going on? There we go. Thank you all for being here. Grateful to be sharing this time with you. Thank you for your attentiveness. Thank you for your prayers, your presence, your gifts, your service, and your witness here at Fayetteville First United Methodist Church. To give you some groundwork of what we'll be doing today, my intent is to, the best of my ability, walk us through the proposals that have come before General Conference, to explain what General Conference is, to look at the proposals and the differences, and then to field questions and hopefully provide answers to you all as it pertains to the ministry, the work, and outreach here at Fayetteville First United Methodist Church. What I'd like to avoid today is discussion centered around the issue of human sexuality. I think that's a very important topic, and it's obviously the topic which is generating all the buzz, it's generating all the proposals. We will create time and space for that, but today is not the day for that. Today is just a day for me to share with you what I know and to field any questions and answers that we might have. So I'm going to open us up with word of prayer, and then I'm going to keep talking. So let's pray. Gracious and loving God, we give you thanks for this, your church, which exists on the kingdom of earth and works towards the ends of the kingdom of heaven. We give thanks for those who have made a way for us to be here through their sacrifices, through their efforts, through their time. We give you thanks for the people who have poured into our lives to offer us examples that we might live lives worthy of the gospel. And above all else, God, we give thanks for your church. We give thanks for the lives of ourselves, and we hope that what we do in the world may create a place where others may stand here in years to come and give thanks for the work and the mission that we share in this time. So bless our time together, and may your Holy Spirit fall fresh upon us. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. So a bit of housekeeping. It's already hot in here. How many of you have familiarized yourself with the 4 major proposals that are coming before General Conference? And this is not, you're not being judged, so this is me reading the room, trying to see. All right, so there are 4 kind of major plans. I did anticipate a low number of hands being raised, so I did print out information that's on United Methodist News Service. Yeah, there's 25 copies, more than 25 people, so share. But you can find all of this at UnitedMethodistNewsService.org. That's where I'm pulling most of my information from that I'll be sharing with you today. So what is being passed around are 4 proposals that stand before General Conference. Well, if you're new to United Methodism or you've been a lifelong United Methodist, you may be asking yourself, what is General Conference and what does it do? General Conference is the official legislative body of the United Methodist Church that makes decisions on polity, makes decisions on discipline, makes decisions upon stances, upon doctrine, and speaks for all churches who consider themselves United Methodist. It is the only official spokes body for the denomination, and it meets, a couple extras if you need them. It meets traditionally every 4 years or every quadrennium, with the exception of last year in 2019 when a special session of General Conference was called. Since 1972, there has been the debate of human sexuality in the Book of Discipline. And it's been one of those things that takes a lot of time, takes a lot of emotional effort, and tends to dominate the news cycle whenever the United Methodist Church gets together. People were worried that the good work that the United Methodist Church was doing was being lost in the news cycle, in the shuffle, in what was being reported. And people have agreed that there are just some things that we're not going to agree about. And so the discussion about human sexuality has been going on since the addition of paragraph 361 in 1972, which has the words, "The practice of homosexuality is incompatible with Christian teaching." And so that discussion has been going on since then, and the issue of human sexuality has generated a lot of conversation. It's generated a lot of concern, a lot of criticism, and it created a lot of heartache in a lot of people's lives. So in 2016, the General Conference of the United Methodist Church put together a task force and kind of charged the bishops and the leadership of the church with coming up with a solution of sorts, not to the issue, but how do we proceed in ministry together. In 2019, in February, General Conference met, and it was just as divisive and emotional an issue as it ever was. And the vote was approved that the traditional language would be upheld in the Book of Discipline. And then people on various sides started to think, well, I can't be part of this church, or they resisted what was being issued, what was being voted on. And so we find ourselves now in a position of really trying to figure out what comes next for the denomination. So you see the comparison of proposals for General Conference for 2020. I have had several mentors in ministry throughout the years, but when I first graduated from seminary and found myself appointed to Beecher Road United Methodist Church, I was still commissioned through the South Georgia Annual Conference. And as a provisional elder, you have to go through what's called a residence in ministry program. And you're assigned 2 mentors. One of my mentors was Scott Hagan, who may be a familiar name around these parts. And the other mentor was a man named John Stevens, who's now serving Chapelwood in Houston, Texas. John Stevens was part of the Indianapolis Plan proposal that you see on that spreadsheet. It has a lot of information, it has a lot of proposals, and it offers many different ways forward for the denomination and what that looks like. There's another one put together by a group called UM Forward that you'll see there, and it's called A New Expressions Worldwide. And you can see some of the way in which the church moves forward. Particularly of note is that the United Methodist Church dissolves altogether under that proposal. Then there's the Next Generation UMC proposed by UMC Next, and it is offering a way for congregations to be part of the United Methodist Church or not. And then a couple weeks ago, on a Friday, I found out with most of everybody else in America that there was a new proposal coming out called the Protocol of Reconciliation and Grace Through Separation. The thing that makes this one distinct over the others is that it was brought together by a wide range of caucus group leaders from varying positions on the issue of human sexuality in the United Methodist Church, from those who identified as progressives or liberals, to those who identified as conservatives and traditionalists, to those that describe themselves as moderate or centrists. I would just like to go on the record that I don't like any of those labels altogether, but it's because the language we've been given is the language I'm using. I think that none of us exist there, and that's the only editorial comment I'll make for now. I'm trying to speak facts. The thing that is unique about the protocol for reconciliation and grace is not just the way in which it was brought about, not just the people who were present, but by the lawyer, the mediation lawyer who volunteered his time to be part of this process. He was the lawyer for the 9/11 Victims Fund. He's a mediation lawyer for the BP oil spill in the Gulf. and he happens to be Jewish. And he thought the work that the United Methodist Church was too good to give up, and so he offered his work pro bono to the church. He offered his firm's work pro bono to the life of the church. And that's something that is distinctive from any other time any other denomination, mainline denomination, has split, whether it be Presbyterian, the Anglican Episcopal split, the Lutherans. This is something that's been different in a lot of different ways. And so what you see, I'm going to read this. I hate professors who read the slides, but I'm going to read the slides to you of what the protocol of reconciliation and grace looks like, mainly because I think it is getting the most traction, the most groundswell, and I don't like to deal in what-ifs, but because that's where we are, this is the what-if proposal, and I think this is where most of our questions will come from. There's still some issues within the protocol that have to be voted as constitutionally appropriate through the Judicial Council, so it's not a done deal, but it's probably the closest and the preferred proposal out of all four that stand there. So the number of denominations that could come out of the proposed resolution are 2 or more. A new traditionalist denomination is formed, and others may also be formed. And the United Methodist Church will continue after the separation. That's unlike the UM Forward, where the United Methodist Church dissolves. So who decides what in this protocol? Just a timeline of everything. When General Conference meets in May of this year, of 2020, all of this will be voted on. And then you can find the timeline later on in the chart there. But it puts it back to the annual conferences and not the local churches to decide whether the conferences, the annual conferences, and again, for those of you who need your United Methodist refresher, those are the geographic regions within the United States. So North Georgia Annual Conference is anything above the Columbus, Macon, Savannah line. Columbus, Macon, and Savannah make the northernmost points of the South Georgia Conference, so anything above the I-80, I-16 corridor is basically North Georgia, and anything below the I-16, I-80 corridor is South Georgia. But we are in the North Georgia Annual Conference, so let's say, and all of this, please remember, is hypothetical. Let's say that the protocol passes in May. It will then be up to the annual conference to vote by July 1st of 2021 whether they want to remain part of the United Methodist Church or whether they want to allow opportunities to break off and form a different denomination. And just so I'm not speaking in vague generalities here, there are congregations that have already broke off from the United Methodist Church, one in South Georgia, in particular Asbury Memorial United Methodist Church in Savannah has broken off and chosen to disaffiliate with the United Methodist Church because they think that the stance on human sexuality is too conservative and traditional. I think the generality that a lot of people have when it comes to the protocol and it comes to leaving the denomination is that the very conservative churches will leave the denomination, but already we're seeing that progressive or liberal churches are already leaving the denomination. I think that's an interesting thing to keep in mind as we continue this conversation. Too often our minds go to generalities rather than specifics, and so we're talking within the specifics here. But so it's voted by the annual conference. Now here's where I'm going to say by my best reading. And when I say by my best reading, that means as much as I've been able to study and interpret what everything is said and what the proposals are, by my best reading, the question arises for me as a pastor of Fayetteville First United Methodist Church is what happens here. And so by my best reading, if the protocol passes, what happens here is we continue to be the church and to carry on the mission. By my best reading, we are not required to take a vote to choose to stay United Methodist or to go in the direction of a new denomination. By my best reading, it is still up to the church to decide whether the church wants to allow same-sex weddings and reunions on church grounds. And by my best reading, it is still up to the minister whether or not the minister wants to perform marriages inside the church or outside the church. I've had the opportunity to perform about 70 weddings, and in that I make couples do a minimum of 3 sessions with me in premarital counseling. And out of those 70 weddings, only in 2 of them did I get a gut feeling where I knew that this wasn't going to work out. I ended up doing the wedding anyway, and sure enough, those marriages ended in divorce within a year. As a pastor, that's on me a little bit. Not to say you shouldn't get married, but to be aware and take serious the covenant that is being made between 2 persons. It's always up to the pastor's discretion. Now, that's my best reading of what the protocol of reconciliation and grace through separation means in the life of Fayetteville First in a very practical way. The only thing that I think, and again, my best reading, the only thing that I think changes in the Book of Discipline if Fayetteville First remains United Methodist Church is paragraph 361, which says the practice of homosexuality is incompatible with Christian teaching, is removed from the Book of Discipline. Everything else stays the same. Again, by my best reading, this has to go through judicial council. This has to be voted on at General Conference. There's a lot that could change within the next 4 or 5 months. There's a lot that could change in that time. I'm focusing on the what-ifs of this protocol because I think it probably has the greatest chance of passing. I'll close with a couple anecdotes and then open it up to questions. When this broke on the news, that Friday, January 6th, 5th, 7th, I don't know. It was a Friday. I know it was a Friday. I started looking at some of the information, looking at who were the people that were seated at the table, and looked at the voices that were in the room as the decisions were being made. And then I went to the websites of those different caucus groups, whether they defined themselves or identified themselves as traditionalists, as centrists, as progressives, as fully inclusives. And the overwhelming sense that I got from reading all the websites and blogs from all broad spectrums is that most people were pleased with this protocol as it stood and the way that it offered a way forward. The last time I think anyone used the word a bunch of United Methodists were pleased together, well, I don't know the answer to that. And so that gave me hope that there might be something that is afoot here. There might be something at work. In talking it over with other colleagues, I was heartened because I think one of the greatest fears that those of us who have pastors, who are pastors of local congregations, is what might happen if the vote were to go to local churches to decide whether to remain or to disaffiliate. I think that would do more harm to the larger body of Christ. I think that would do more harm to the church because we don't fight very well as human creatures. And that's a pastoral concern that I have. So I was encouraged, even though I was discouraged at how I found out, I was encouraged at the way that it went down. And I am encouraged in that it offers an opportunity for those who wish to remain. It offers an opportunity for those who wish to leave. And it offers a way for the church to continue to be about the mission and ministry of the church. In 2004, the General Conference met in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. At the time, I was a junior at Birmingham Southern College in Alabama, which is a United Methodist affiliated institution. And I had the opportunity to go for a few nights to General Conference. I don't know why I still use the word opportunity there. I got to go. I had to go as a representative of the college. to annual, I got to go. It really was a joy to go and to see it at work. But during those 3 days there, in addition to going to see the Cubs beat the Pirates one night, I did get the opportunity to sit in on the discussion in the small group that was discussing the issue of human sexuality. It was in a motel in a conference room center, and it broke my heart to see the way that people were talking at each other and talking about one another in that room while discussing this issue. It was at that moment that I determined to be a minister, not to make up my mind about the issue, but to ease the hurt that people experience on either side whenever people feel attacked. I feel my call is first and foremost a pastor, and it was in that moment at General Conference in 2004 that I really felt a sense that I was called into ministry and God was affirming that call. So I have seen the sausage being made. I was there. It wasn't great. I don't envy the people who were in the room when the protocol was put together, but I'm grateful for their willingness to be honest and to honor the process. I'm grateful for the work that it's put out. And so I'm going to open it up to questions, but I want to kind of give I want to give two disclaimers. First and foremost, my favorite paragraph of the Book of Discipline is paragraph 201, found on page 167, which says the most faithful place for making disciples of Jesus Christ is the local church. When we lose sight of that, I think we've lost sight of the greater picture. I'd like for us to hold that in mind as a congregation. But before I open it up to question and answer, I want you to be aware that some of my answers may be, I don't know. Some of my responses to you may be, what do you mean by that? Or a clarifying question. Please know that I'm not trying to be dismissive or curt or cute or rude or arrogant. I'm trying to provide the most honest feedback and answer that I know how. And as I said earlier about generalities, sometimes it helps to deal with specificities rather than generalities in order to answer the question. So the more direct you can be, the more honest you can be, I might be able to better answer your question. But be prepared for a question back, and please know that it's not coming from a place of antagonism. It's really just a question of clarity. I'm going to close with this from Romans chapter 12, verses 9 through 21, before we get into question and answer. And it says, "Let love be genuine. Hate what is evil. Hold fast to what is good. Love one another with mutual affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Do not lag in zeal. Be ardent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Rejoice in hope. Be patient in suffering. Persevere in prayer. Contribute to the needs of the saints. Extend hospitality to the strangers. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Do not claim to be wiser than you are. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, but take thought for what is noble in the sight of all. If it is possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave room for the wrath of God. For it is written, 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay,' says the Lord. No, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink. For by doing this, you will heap burning coals on their heads. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." I close that, my portion, not as a way of telling you what to do, but as reminding us that Scripture invites us as a way to live with one another. So I'm going to open it up for questions, and hopefully I can answer them. And if not, as I said, I'll ask a follow-up, or I'll say I don't know, and get back to you. I'm going to drink some water now. Yes, Sandra.
You said that well, we all heard about the last group, the protocol for reconciliation and grace, was a combination of people on all sides of this issue, and that they got together with a mediator actually and did that. What were the other groups made of? You said a friend was on the first group. Was that similar? And the other two groups, were they pretty much members of one particular feeling that made like all the progressives, and they made a decision? What were they made of?
So I'll repeat the question. The protocol was brought together in various people from various spectrums and positions on the issue of human sexuality. What were the other groups made of? For example, the Indianapolis Plan. The Indianapolis Plan was, I think, and I'm going to preface this with I think, because I haven't fully I haven't fully immersed myself in it. I believe the Indianapolis Plan was pastors of large congregations in the Midwest region, that, not because it was located in Indianapolis, but I think they convened in Indianapolis. So I think it was mostly pastors of large congregations who were already feeling the pressure of people leaving their church on either side of the spectrum because they were somewhere and they didn't see the church, and they wanted their church's ministry and mission to stay together. So that's my understanding of the Indianapolis Plan. Mostly large pastor churches, probably mostly centrists, but on either side. The UN Forward, I believe, was put together by mostly people to progressive and centrist, to offer a way for everyone to find a graceful exit or a new, and that's why you have 4 different options. There was a study that was done about a year ago where they polled United Methodists and it looked like a bell curve, where people on the issue of human sexuality align themselves either very conservative traditionalists, somewhere centrist to conservative, somewhere centrist to progressive, and somewhere very conservative. And so I think that group took that data and tried to put something together. The Next Generation UMC, I'm not exactly sure about that one. I think it was an attempt out of the Commission on the Way Forward, which was put together in 2019, which was representational of many different people, but not many different positions. And so it was probably the closest thing. The difference in the protocol is that a mediator was brought in, whereas I think the other 3, they tried to work it out in-house. To me, that's the biggest difference. And that's the one, out of all the stuff I just said, that's the only thing I'm certain of. But I'm pretty sure most of that. If not, we can go back and watch the tape and figure it out. But thank you, that's an excellent question.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused. Trying to read through those protocols, the links that you sent. What you just said a few minutes ago was that if the North Georgia Conference votes to stay with the UMC, then this church would stay with it. And then the membership will have no vote. If you don't agree with, we'll say, the progressive, if they go that way, then it's up to each individual to leave rather than the church take a vote. And I thought I read where the church had until like 2024 to vote on this issue.
That is, everything you just said is correct, and I didn't make that clear. So one of the things that I said that I didn't make clear, and that I didn't spell out correctly, thank you for that, was the annual conference will vote to stay as a conference in the within the United Methodist Church. I think churches still have the opportunity by the year, churches have the opportunity by the year 2024 to vote on whether to be part of a new expression of the Methodist movement, or to remain in the United Methodist. So it will every church can vote. There's nothing prohibiting a vote, but there's also nothing mandating a vote. I fully anticipate, in full disclosure, that we would vote, and I think that we should vote at some point. I don't want to take the vote now until we know what it looks like later. I think that it will come to a vote eventually for Fayetteville First, and I think it would be more honest for everyone to vote than to have a thought of what we should and shouldn't do. So I mean, in a weird way, I hope I'm here for the vote because I like being here, and I hope I'm here for a long time. I'm not anticipating being here for a vote because I know it's going to be divisive, but I think that that's part of the church. So it's a very good clarifying question that I did not make clear earlier, so thank you for...
Can I follow up?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just wanted to kind of ask you also, you said that when I read about the judicial council, I mean, if they decide that, that human sexuality or whatever, homosexuality is not compatible, throw it out. I mean, this is all a moot point then, isn't it?
So the question is, what about the Judicial Council ruling? The Judicial Council will rule on the legislation of the proposal and not the issue of human sexuality. And there are a couple places that are kind of loose, I think in sections 4 and 5 of the protocol that have to be refined in order for it to be in compliance with the bylaws, the Book of Discipline states. So I think the other reason that they wanted to get this out before General Conference is so that Judicial Council can make sure that it would pass if it were voted, that if it were voted upon, it wouldn't get thrown out because it did not meet standards. Does that make sense? Okay. That's an excellent question too. Thank you.
Follow on. I see two parts to this whole thing. One, the church, clergy. Have they put anything out about the clergy as to how they're going to manage that kind of issue where you've got mismatches in churches and clergy?
The question is, so what about the clergy when the issue comes out and is resolved? I don't know. It's a good place to start. What I think is going to happen is I think that for a long time, clergy and DSs and bishops have danced around the issue and not been able to say, well, I believe this or I don't believe this for fear of anything. I think that has created mismatches in congregations. And I think that this is going to sound really bad. I'm going to say it anyway. I think that some clergy, it's hard for me to say. I think, and it's because I think there are some people who are who love the church very deeply and who care for the church very deeply. But maybe being a pastor isn't their first calling. I hope at the end of my career in my life, people remember me for being a pastor and not for anything else. And now this is just personal soapbox for a moment, but I have, I won't tell you today, but I'll tell you one-on-one conversations, and I'll tell you where my opinions lie. But I hope that it's evident that I am a pastor to this congregation, and until it's agreed upon that I'm no longer filling a pastoral duty, I hope to remain here as long as possible. That's my calling. And so I can't answer for the denomination and for other clergy. I can answer for myself. And that's a hard thing for me to say because I know that I have a position of authority. I know I have a position of being privileged to enter into people's lives at their most vulnerable, dealing with death and loss and grief. It's not something I take lightly, and I hope that at the end of the day, I'm still seen first and foremost as a pastor here. So that's a very loaded response to a very honest question.
And the purpose of the question was for y'all, for the clergy, to understand the pathways they have available to them. Because it's not right to leave you out there hanging
Right.
with this thing going on caused by some other thing that's beyond your
And I think one of the things that we will see happen over the next 5 to 10 years in the United Methodist denomination is losing the language of guaranteed appointment. Right now, every clergy person is guaranteed an appointment. Reading the tea leaves, I think that that's going to be a thing of the past, where you kind of enter into this very honestly and with integrity of knowing that just because you're a United Methodist pastor doesn't mean you'll always be guaranteed an appointment. That's just my reading of what's happening and what's coming. I've also been talking to my in-laws who own 5 furniture stores, and I've got a backup plan. So. Let me take you down to Albany, Georgia, to Railway Freight Furniture, the largest furniture warehouse south of the Mason-Dixon line. And we'll get you a recliner that you love. With a store just opening in Columbus, so we don't have to drive all the way back. No, it is a question. My hope for all who serve churches is that they're able to serve the people there faithfully and to serve them well, and to be honest about issues that they see important to the church, but first and foremost, that they're pastors, that's my soapbox, and I'll stop there. But you asked a question, I took it in a completely different direction. That's okay.
I haven't been in the United Methodist Church all my life, so I'm a little confused about the different levels of conferences.
Mm.
You mentioned the annual conference, which is North Georgia. Below that on this sheet, it says something about a central conference. Then there's the one in May. Is that worldwide, nationwide, regional?
That's an excellent clarifying question. So I'll kind of start from bottom up instead of top down. So as I said earlier, my favorite paragraph in the Book of Discipline is paragraph 201, which says the most effective place for making disciples is the local church. So it starts at the local level first and foremost. Then churches are broken up into districts, geographical areas. We are in the LaGrange district, which operates from LaGrange all the way to basically North Fayette County. And churches, in Pine Mountain, in Coweta County. Coweta County is great. Anyway, it's districts. So local congregations, district, and then annual conferences. And we're in the North Georgia Annual Conference. And then it's broken into jurisdictions. We're in the southeastern jurisdiction, which includes Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, and Florida. And then we are part of the General Conference from there, which is the worldwide denomination. Central conferences are the conferences located in Philippines and Africa. And so the issue of human sexuality is often a life or death matter in some of those developing countries. And so there's a great sensitivity in the protocol because you did have bishops and leaders from the Central Conference as part of the conversations to say these issues matter for us, whether, if people, for example, see pastors part of a denomination that allows homosexuality, then their lives could be put at risk, and their ministries could be put at risk in developing, countries. So that's one of the great sensitivities, is it allows for the protocol, as it's proposed, allows for that contextualization in parts of the world. So local, district, annual conference, jurisdictional conference, general conference. It's a very good question. It's one of those things, as having grown up with a dad who's a minister and mom who worked for Cokesbury, that's my DNA, so I always take it for granted. So thank you for that. It's a very good question.
I was surprised on that Friday when the news came out, and a lot of people were, and I'm just wondering about the General Conference last year and the decisions that were made, and so how does that reconcile with all of this and with this protocol, and why are we confused?
It's a very good question, thank you, Lori. So the question, met with shock on Friday when this was proposed in after the General Conference last year, which provided a response and provided a path. Why all the protocol, why separation when it seemed to be resolved in 2019. I'll start with I don't know, but then I'll say with what I've seen. I watched the video of the Q&A that was done, the panel discussion with the people who were on the panel, and I forget Tom, what's his name? Keith Boyette, who is the president of the Wesleyan Covenant Association, who is one of the more traditionalists, said that even though the traditionalist plan approved, in order to get the parts, and I'm completely butchering this, so forgive me, but what he said was that in order for the votes to go through, to be able to uphold the vote, to be able to punish, which is not the right word, but to hold accountable the people who were in violation of the discipline, he simply said in that question and answer that group didn't have the votes to uphold the decision as it was made in 2019, and that this way of leaving allows them to not have to fight and not have to. So he acknowledged that there was resistance from folks with the new implementation of what was 2019, but also acknowledged that it would continue to fight and to be a divisive issue throughout the time. So the answer of I don't know why all this keeps coming up when it was decided in 2019, other than I think people realized that it was always going to be something. So I don't know. It's a question worth asking, but I don't know the fullness of that answer.
Has there been any other social issues that are so divisive that the church has had to struggle with in the history of the church?
The question, have there ever been any issues that have been so divisive in the history of the church? And yes, there were, I say it half jokingly but half seriousness. In the 7th century, the Eastern Church and the Western Church went to war and people died over a line in the Creed which talks about it's filioque, begotten of the Spirit or not. And that was a very divisive thing then. It's not a social issue. Throughout the history of the church, obviously in 1848, we broke into a Methodist Episcopal Church and a Methodist Episcopal Church South. That's when Fayetteville First was founded in 1848 as Methodist Episcopal Church South. And it was over the issue of can pastors and bishops own slaves. So that was an issue. Up until 1982, I believe, 1980, pastors could not stay pastors if they were divorced and remarried. It didn't split the church, but it was an issue that was discussed. So the answer is yes. To that question, there have been divisive issues. I think pastorally, I would respond this way to what is currently facing our church, and it comes from a professor of ethics I had at seminary, Stanley Hauerwas, who has a book called Disrupting Time. It's a book of prayers, sermons, other stuff that he wrote. And in one of those prayers, it's a line that's always stuck with me. He said, "God forgive us when we make idols of ourselves and think that we are living in the most important time of human history and forget that the most important time in human history was 2,000 years ago at an empty tomb." To me, that's my pastoral response to where we find ourselves. I'll offer this as I begin to wrap up, I still want to leave time for questions, but I want to honor those who need to be on at one. When Christmas morning rolled around and our girls opened up the Frozen 2 dolls, Anna and Elsa, we thought we were so smart because there were 2 dolls. But there's one Anna doll and there's one Elsa doll. For those of you that don't know, Anna and Elsa are Disney princesses. And Elsa has all the magic power. She's the one that can turn ice and make ice shoot from her hands and do all this stuff. And so Elsa's the one that everyone really wanted. And so Mills and Mary Ellis, as a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, fought over this one doll with all the other great stuff that was going on. And we made the parental decision to intervene before, well, it was already too late because punches were thrown. So we removed Elsa from the equation. And everyone was angry. It didn't solve anything. I think where we find ourselves now in this metaphor is that we're fighting over one doll. The problem is that we've made the doll the church, and we're fighting over the church instead of taking the time to acknowledge that what we disagree on is the issue of human sexuality in the church. What has suffered is the church. What has suffered for too long is the church, and what continues to run the risk of suffering is the church. If we left the girls to their own devices, the doll would probably be broken. And there comes a time for someone to step in and not to take away the doll for the sake of fighting or not fighting, but for the health of the doll. I think, and this is my metaphor, and it breaks down and it doesn't go all the way like any analogy or metaphor does. I think that when we treat the church as a doll and we fight over it, we run the risk of breaking it. And I think that's the bigger danger that awaits us rather than anything else. I think that allowing people who can no longer stay United Methodist without that language of human sexuality is incompatible with Christian teaching in the Book of Discipline, allowing them a gracious exit preserves the church. I think for those for whom that has never been an issue in sharing the grace and love of God, it preserves the church. So I think that what the protocol offers is someone stepping in and saying, the reality is we're going to find something to fight about always. This removes that language of what we fight about. And in 4 years we can fight about something else. But we still have one Elsa doll in our house, and she is intact. And one night she sleeps with Mills, and one night she sleeps with Mary. I don't know what that means. It's the best I could do to provide some legs to what's going on as I seek to be a pastor here. Any more questions, concerns, comments? Yeah.
So there's a big vote in May, and North Georgia Conference is going to be voting on our behalf. Who are those people, and do we know how they're going to vote?
Yes, so the question is, General Conference is going to be in May, and there are people representing North Georgia. I think it's 13 clergy and 13 laity that are going to be voting. I don't know how they're going to be voted. In the next round of information I put out, I will make sure to provide links to who those people are. One of the things that I know is that in signing up for this, they are open to receiving feedback, to receiving questions, letters. I don't know how they will vote with the proposed legislation, but I'm making a note to myself to include a list of delegates to General Conference from North Georgia. Thank you. That's a good question.
Is the centrist, is that just a group that's in between the other two groups, basically?
The question is a centrist a group that's in between the other two groups? Yes. In 2004, the General Conference that I was able to go to, then Pastor Bill McAlilly, who's now the bishop of the Tennessee Annual Conference, gave a speech outlining and coining the term the Methodist middle. And in that speech at General Conference, he talked about the Methodist middle being the people who share Sunday school classes and UMW circles, United Methodist Men's Group, and breakfast and Bible study together, who don't agree upon the issue of human sexuality, who don't agree upon, episcopal authority, but who share life together. I think that's who the centrists are, to borrow from Bill McAlilly's phrase of the Methodist middle. That's my answer and my editorial answer as well. And I do want to close that if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to me. I do want to be as transparent as possible. One of the questions I got the Sunday after the Friday is, what conversations has Fayetteville First had regarding what's going to happen next? And I said, it was the first conversation I had, because when I saw the proposal come out, I intentionally did not respond to any emails or anything, because I'd had to figure out what was going on myself. So I don't want anyone to get a sense that there's some subversive group meeting, that there's some agenda. So any questions or concerns you have, please reach out to me and let me know, because I'm happy to answer, again, to the best of my ability and to create space to work through this together. Anything else? Well, thank you all again for being here. I'm going to stick around if there's something you wanted to ask and didn't want to ask in front of everyone. Please know that I am grateful to be a pastor here. I speak on behalf of all the staff and appointed clergy here. We're grateful to be your pastors. And if you have anything that you would like to ask us, please don't hesitate to let us know. I didn't clear that with you, Allison, but I think you were So let's pray. Gracious God, we give you thanks that we are your children and we are your people. We pray for each other, for those who are not able to be with us today, for those who have shared their lives with us and shared your love with us. We pray that as we move forward, we may do so in your love and your grace. Give us the wisdom and discernment and the assurance that you are our God, and there is nowhere that we can go that your love will not go before us. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Amen.